Daf Yom Shabbos, Kodesh Shabbos Chazon, and so we're going to start with the on the bottom of 66b. It's a Daf Yomi Samal Sayin. We'll start on the bottom of 66b, 6 lines from the bottom, where the Gemara has said that Rabbi Yossi is of the position that Mili will Mimser and L'Shliach, that if you have a statement just from words or something intangible, then the agent can't hand it over to a third party to do. But in a case where, so the Gemara said, in a case where the agent is specifically told to do it, Imru, then it would be okay. Then even Rabbi Yossi would admit if the agent was specifically told to appoint another party. So the Gemara says, does the Gemara really say, does Rabbi Yossi really admit in a case of Imru? Vatanan. Didn't we learn? The Mishnah states on Ayin Aleph, Kosav Sofer Ve'ed Kosher. That let's say a scribe, the Mishnah states that let's say the scribe and a witness write the get, it's kosher. But how can it be if the scribe and the witness write the get, it's kosher? It the get needs 2 witnesses. 1 witness is not sufficient. So Rabbi Yirmi explained that chasam sofer sheninu means to say if the scribe signs it along with the get, along with the witness, it's kosher. So that's what we're talking about in that Mishnah. That is, the scribe signs it along with another witness, it's kosher. The Amar Rav Chisna, and Rav Chisna explained Masnisin money. Who is our Mishnah like? Our Mishnah is like Rabbi Yossi, who says Mili lo mimser and lo shliach. Our Mishnah must be like the position of Rabbi Yossi, that words that if you ask somebody to do something, he can't appoint a third party. Because that means to say the scribe for sure had to have been asked directly by the husband. Because the Isal Kadaitach Mod Rabbi Yossi Ba'omer Imru. Because if you would say that Rabbi Yossi would allow the scribe to be able to hand over the person who was appointed to be able to hand over his agency to a scribe, then Nafak Minei Churba, then sometimes a terrible thing would happen. The Zinin the Amrlu L'Shnayim. We're on top of 67a, because sometimes the husband would say to 2 people, Amru is sofer v'yachtov, or poni v'yachtov. Sometimes the scribe would say to 2 people, tell the scribe to write it and you to be the witnesses. Mishum kisufa de sofer, chayshi umlachtem echamei sofer ba'dayo. And then sometimes the scribe, they would be too embarrassed to tell the scribe, listen, he doesn't want you to be the witness. And they would have the scribe write it. And the husband didn't do it. So it must be that it can't happen unless he was asked directly. Because other times people, if Rabbi Yossi says, because other times people would then ask the scribe even when he wasn't specifically asked, and that would be a tremendous problem. So therefore, we see from here that Rabbi Yossi says we don't say Imru. So how come? We wanted to say that even Rabbi Yossi admits in a circumstance where he asked the scribe, where he told the people to appoint somebody else, that it's okay. So the Gemara says, no, what Rabbi Yossi is saying is, Kivan the Amar Mar, the Gemara explains that Rabbi Yossi, since it was taught, and we're going to see this later on, since Rabbi taught that although it's kosher, if he says Imru, you shouldn't do it, but still, even though it's kosher, you shouldn't do it. It's not common, it's not found at all, and so therefore, they're not concerned about it, and so therefore, they're not concerned that you're going to ask the scribes to do it, and tell them to ask somebody else, and then there'll be this problem with the chasima. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, therefore, we don't make this decree. Since Rashi says, sell to the scribe, and he will write it, and to such and such a person, and they'll sign it's kosher haget, and that the get will be kosher v'lo taseh. Meaning to say, technically speaking, you could ask the agents to appoint a scribe, but still, since you shouldn't do it, it's not common that you're going to ask somebody else to be the scribe. And so therefore, the rabbis, therefore, it's not common that you do this type of case of Imru. And so therefore, since it's not common, therefore, Rabbi Yossi doesn't, therefore, we don't have to be worried about this Chorban. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi does say, we could say Imru, and we're not worried that this terrible situation is going to occur. So the Gemara says, but there's another problem. But Imru is so for v'yachto v'atem chasumu. But we still have to be concerned that maybe the husband will say to the two witnesses, ask the sofer to write the get, and you yourselves will sign it. Then under these circumstances, they're allowed to do it. V'azli hanach, and then these people will go mishum kisufa the sofer, because they'll be worried that the scribe will be embarrassed. Why aren't we concerned about this situation? So the Gemara says, so the Gemara says, this situation, technically speaking, it's kosher, where if but you shouldn't do it because you have to be concerned that they'll about a situation. So the Gemara says, so it makes sense according to the situation that it's kosher, but you shouldn't do it. According to one who says it is kosher and it is okay to do, but what about this problem that maybe they could appoint, they'll end up having the scribe sign it even when he wasn't specifically told to ask somebody else. They'll have the scribe be the witness. So the Gemara says, "Oh, Rabbi Yossi Tarti Amar." Rabbi Yossi said two laws, and Shmuel Savrei Kavasi B'Chado Palaglei B'Chado. Meaning to say, Rabbi Yossi says in both circumstances it's disqualified. Whether he said to three people, and whether he said Imru, in both cases, Rabbi Yossi says it's disqualified. And so therefore, we're saying that our Mishnah can be talking about a situation where the witness signed it. And with one kosher with the scribe, and because he's not concerned, but Shmuel agrees with him in one case, and Shmuel argues with him in one case. Shmuel holds like the halachas like Rabbi Yossi, only where he says it to three people that they don't have the authority to appoint another person. But Shmuel argues in a case where he says specifically Imru, there Shmuel argues with Rabbi Yossi. So Gufa Amar Shmuel Rabbi Yossi the Amar Mili Lamimsero Shmiach. And then for Shmuel says the laws like Rabbi Yossi in this circumstance where he said it to three people, because we say that Mili Lamimsero Shmiach, where he didn't say Imru, that Shmuel agrees with Rabbi Yossi that they can't appoint a third party. Why does he? So now the Gemara discusses something, some beautiful phrases we're about to see. Amar Fan of Rabbi Shimon Bar Rabbi. Since Rabbi Meir and Chanina Ish Ono argue with Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah, and they said if you said to three people, and they're a court, and they could appoint other people to write it and to sign it. Mara Rabbi Omar Rabbi Yossi. So why did Rabbi say the laws like Rabbi Yossi? Amar Shtok ben Ishtok. He says, "Quiet, my son, be quiet." More Raisi is Rabbi Yossi. He said, you never saw Rabbi Yossi. Amalei Raiso, if you would have seen him, you would have understood how great he was. Nimuku Imo. You would have said that halacha is always like him because he has always the correct analysis. And the Tanya, as we learned to price, so Isi ben Yehuda, Yemona Shivchon Shal Chachamim. Isi ben Yehuda used to list out the praises of the Chachamim. Rabbi Meir was a Chacham V'Sofer. Rabbi Meir was a wise man and a scribe, meaning to say he used to write Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzos. How do we know that Rabbi Meir was a wise man and a scribe? The Gemara in Sota tells us that he said in the name of Rabbi Meir, when I used to study Torah with Rabbi Akiva, I would put kankantom into the ink, and he didn't say anything. And he says, and then he came to, so we see that he was a special scribe. Rabbi Tarfon was the gal shel agozim. He was a pile of nuts. And just like if you take one nut from the pile, all the other nuts fall on top of each other. So too, when Rabbi Tarfon, when you would ask him something, he would respond and he would bring a proof from all the sources. Rabbi Shmuel was chanus muzenis. He was a shop where all the food was prepared and ready. And so they were like a supermarket. You could get everything from him. You don't have to wait. He had everything. So that's like Rabbi Shmuel, all the Torah study was arranged before him. Rabbi Akiva was an Otzer Balum, meaning to say Rabbi Akiva was he was like a sealed storage, a sealed treasury, meaning to say, just like when you make a big basket of crops and you put each part in its own unit, so too was Rabbi Akiva, that he had so much Torah and it was all segregated, and he would come back and study it. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri was a kupas arochim. He was like a box of spices. That just like he had every single spice of the Torah. But Elazar ben Azariah was kupa shel besamim. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri was a box of the merchants who sell the spices. Elazar ben Azariah was the box of the spices. Of course, each one of these things we have to go into depth to really understand the grayness of each one. Mishnah's Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Kavinaki. He was Kavinaki. He was a measure which was the right measure, clean, and a small amount. I don't remember who's, I think it was the Vilna Gaon who said that the gematria for Kav is 102, and he had 102 teachings throughout the Shas, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Rabbi Yossi Nimuko Imo. Rabbi Yossi had the right analysis, and that's why the halachas like him. Rabbi Shimon was Tochen Harbe Umotzi Kim. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai used to grind a lot. Umotzi Kiman, he just forgot a little bit. Tana Mishaka, that means Mishacha Kima, he just would forget a little. Umasha Motzi, Eino Motzi El Subin, and the part that he would forget, that would be just the bran. Excuse me, sorry about that. Rabbi Shimon with Talmidav. Banai Shenumi Dosai. Rabbi Shimon said to his students, he said, study my teachings, Shemidosai Trumos, because I really refined my measures, and I refined them Trumos Midosov Shel Rabbi Akiva, from the best qualities of Rabbi Akiva. Meaning I sifted through it the best to pick my best measurements. So now the Gemara goes back to the statement we said earlier that there was a certain type of get which is kosher, but you shouldn't do this in Israel. Gufa Amar Oshnayim Imru Sofer V'Yichtov V'Poni Uponi V'Yachnu. If you said to two people, say to the scribe to write it, and to such and such a person that they should sign it. Amar Avuna Marav kosher. Since he says Imru, then even Shmuel agrees that it's kosher. But says Israel, but you shouldn't do this in Israel. So if it's kosher, why shouldn't you do it? You have to be concerned that the reason why we don't say to a person, hire these two witnesses to be the witnesses on the get and the scribe to write it, because we're concerned that maybe the woman will hire two agents, that they'll go to a scribe and say that the husband sent them to write the get. And then they'll say to the witnesses that they were sent by the husband to tell them to write the get. And then as a result of this, since we want to make it direct between the husband and the scribe, therefore you can't appoint an agent to appoint a scribe. The Gemara says, do we really have to have such a concern? Didn't we learn in the Brisa? Let's say there are witnesses who are signed on a document that's selling a field, Valget Isha, or on a divorce. The Chachamim weren't concerned that these witnesses we're not concerned that these witnesses can't marry the woman under these circumstances, or that these witnesses are prohibited to buy the field, even though we could say that they testify because they want to buy the field from the purchaser, or they want to marry the woman after she was divorced, and that's why they're lying. But nevertheless, we know that once people sign a document, it's not going to be forgery. We're not going to be concerned that they're lying on their contract. So the Gemara says, so if that's the case, since we know that we're not concerned that they're going to be signing falsely on the document, why do we have to be concerned that they'll go and make these false witnesses here? Why isn't that our concern? The Gemara says there's a difference. In the case of the witnesses signing the document, then they're actually doing an action of signing their name. We're not concerned that people, it's not our primary concern that witnesses are going to sign falsely on a document. But we are concerned it's much easier to have them just say something. People will be more likely to lie if it's to say something untrue than to actually sign something untrue. So the Gemara says, what about the following case? Amar Shnayim, Imru Sofer v'Yichtov. If two people say to the scribe and ask him to write the get, V'atem chasomu, and you should sign the get, meaning that he says to the husband says to two people, you ask the scribe to write it and you sign it. And here we're not concerned that the woman is going to hire the witnesses because they themselves needs to be the witnesses. Rav Chisda says kosher v'otasa. It's kosher, you shouldn't do it. Rabbi Baruch Hana says kosher v'tasa. So Rav Chisda says you still shouldn't do it, even though it's not the concern here that the woman is hiring these false witnesses. You still shouldn't do it. You still shouldn't do it, so that you don't come to the other circumstance as well. Rabbi Baruch Hana says kosher. Nachman says kosher v'otasa. Rav Shish says kosher tasa. Rabbi Yosef says kosher v'otasa. Rabbi Yosef says kosher tasa. And some reverse all these positions. Okay, we're now on the top of 67b. Amar Sarah kiss forget. We said in our Mishnah, he says to 10 people to write the get from my wife. One writes it and two sign it. Tana Rabbanan. Amar Sarah kiss forget utnu ishi. If the husband says to 10 men, write the get and give it to my wife. Echa kosev ayidei kulan. One can write it for all of them, because he doesn't really mean that all of them should write it. It means one write it and all of them could sign it. If one of them, if he says 10 write it and give it, it means one of them writes it. But if he says kulchem ksuvu, but if he says all of you need to write it, echa kosev b'mamad kulan, that means one writes it in front of all of them. If he says holichu get leishti, echad molach ayidei kulan, he says bring the get to my wife, one brings it for everyone. But he says kulchem holichu, so if he says all of you need to bring it, then echad molach b'mamad kulan, one of them needs to bring it with everybody else accompanying him. So the Gemara says, let's say mana osan, let's say he doesn't say all of you, but he counts them out. He says, he counts the number of people. He says, you, and when he finishes counting them, he says, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and he says, write a get for my wife. What will be the law there? Do we say it's like kulchem, or like the first case, meaning one of you does it? Huna amar mana enu kulchem. He says, if he counts them out, that's not like kulchem. If he counts it out, it's not like kulchem. Hold on. Manu is not like kulchem. And Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Roma says mana rei kulchem. It is like kulchem. Amar Papa Vo Puligi had the manu kul had the manu miktsasai. They're not arguing. One is where he counted out all of them, and the second case is we just counts out a part of them. Meaning to say, and some say it in one direction and some say it in the other direction. Meaning to say, some say that when he counts at all of them, that means that he includes all of them, and when he counts part of them, it means it's not like he said kulchem, and just those who are listed need to sign it. And some say the opposite, that when he counts at all of them, it's not kulchem, because if he intended to kulchem, he would have said kulchem. So since but where if he does part of them, it's as though he intends to say kulchem because he didn't have the ability to say kulchem. He intended to do all of them. So both the approaches can be said in either direction. Iskin Rav Yehuda begita de kulchem. Rav Yehuda instituted by get that we have to be concerned that his intent was kulchem. If he says to a whole bunch of people do this, then he means kulchem. So the Gemara says, therefore, he instituted that when many people write a get under these circumstances, they say, he said to us, Ksovu o kulchen o kol chad v'chad min kon. He said to us to write it either all of us or one of us. Chasamu o kulchen o kol tro minaychon. Sign the get either all of us or any two of us. O vilu o kulchen o kol chad v'chad min kon. Bring it either us or all of us or one or two of us, or each one of us. Amarava zimnin the guys leo dibure. Sometimes the husband shortens his words. Va'amar kulchan v'omar kolchan minkan. Sometimes he says kulchan, and he didn't finish to say, or any one of you, va'asilev sule, and will come to disqualify the get, and that will be a mistake because she's really no longer married to him. Write the get, and each one of them is able to do this. Chasomu kol minachan. Sign the get, and any one of you two could sign it. Avilu v'kol chaminachan. Bring it in, each one of you. Hadran alacha omer. And now we begin this next chapter. The next chapter is called Misha Achsu. So this is the beginning of this chapter. The first few davim are a lot of agadata about medicine. And the medicine, a lot of this medicine, and also stories about demons. And the medicine and the demons are unfortunately very hard for us to understand because of our extreme limitations. But as a basic level, it's telling us that the Gemara, the Torah, is able to provide for us such a tremendous richness in our life that it can even make us feel better. If we, of course, understood the Gemara and all of its secrets, we would understand what the Gemara is saying. But since we don't understand the Gemara and all its secrets, therefore it's very dangerous to apply it. It would be like trying to fly an airplane if all you did was see an airplane on TV, and then you got into the plane and tried to fly it. Of course, you'd crash. So we don't have the depth to understand the Gemara's medicine, so we should never try to do it on our own. So the Talmud begins by saying, Misha Achsu Kordaikos, somebody who has this illness, this mental illness that's called Kordaikos. Rashi says that this was the name of a demon that rules over a person when he drinks too much wine that's undiluted. V'amar kisvu gel ishti, and he writes while he's filled with this illness. The Rambam says it's a seizure. It says, write a get for my wife. Lo amar klum. He said nothing, because when you're insane, your words don't count. Amar kisvu gel ishti, but if he says, write a get for my wife, and he said this while he was healthy, v'achazel kurdaikos, and then the kurdaikos took a hold of him. And so after he had this mental illness attack, he says, don't write it. His latter words mean nothing, because he said to give the get before he got sick. Nishtatek, or let's say as a result of illness, he became silent. And we said to him, write a get for your wife. When he nodded with his head, we test him 3 times. If he says when he's supposed to say no, he says no, and when he's supposed to say yes, yes, that means to say he's of sound mind. He could not, he just can't speak. Then they can write to get and give it. Gemara says, my kordaikus, what's your nikis? So the Gemara says, Amar Shmuel, what does it mean? What does kordaikus mean? Hold on one second. What does kordaikus mean? So Shmuel explains that what it means is that it means that he was overcome because he drank new wine that was purchased, that came out from the press, but it was not really fermented properly. And so therefore it didn't have the ability to age yet, and it's called kordaikus. It wasn't properly prepared. So if that's the case, why doesn't it say somebody who just drank the new wine? Mar says, that this demon that takes a hold of somebody who drinks this new wine, that's called kordaikus. So the Mar says, why do we need to know what it's called? They used to write an amulet to heal you, and so therefore you need to know how to write the proper demon's name in it, in the amulet, in order to heal you. Of course, it's all a question whether or not you're even allowed to write an amulet. So, okay, that's a separate question. Mar says, Maya Sufi, how do you get healed from this kordaikus? Bisra sumka gumri. You should eat red meat that's cooked on coals, and that is very lean meat. V'chamra marka, and you shall drink wine that was diluted with a lot of water. Amar Abaye, I really aim. So Abaye says, my mother, and he was raised by his maid, who he called his mother. My mother said to me, Shimsha bas yoma, if you have a heat stroke one day, so what do you do for this? Kuza demaya, drink a cup of water. And when it's bas tri yomi, and when it was the day 2 of this heat stroke, Sikure, you have to let your blood. Bas Tlasa, when it's 3 days old, Bas Tlasa Yomi, Bisra Sumka Agumri, eat the red meat, the lean red meat on coals. Chamra Marka, let's say with wine that was mixed with water. Bashimsha Tika, let's say you have heat stroke, it's lasted for many days. What do? Laisi Tarnagola Ukamti, you have to bring a black hen, and you tear open its stomach. And you take it's the middle of, and you cut the middle of the head of the sick person, meaning I guess you cut their scalp a little bit. And you put the head on the place of the cut, and it stays there ad the misrach until the blood becomes attached on his head, until it congeals. And afterwards, the sick person should go down and stand in the water until his neck, until he feels like his heart is getting weaker, and then he should swim a little and float, and then come up from the water and sit down. And if you can't do this with the hen, he should eat a week. And it should go down and stand in the water until his neck, until his heart gets weak, and then he comes up from the water. Somebody who has a heat stroke or somebody who has a fever, what should he do? Again, you take this meat, put it on the coals, and the diluted wine, and with talga. And what do you do for somebody who gets sick from the snow? Bisra shmeina gumri. Then you take the fatty meat, put it on the coals, v'chamra chaya, and then you take undiluted wine. Rav Amram Chasida kiavim mitzaron le'beireish kalusa. When Rav Amram Chasida, when he was being harassed by the people, the servants of the Reish Kalusa's house, havu magnu le'atalga. They would lie him down on snow, and he would get cold. So the next day, the servants of the Reish Kalusa said to him, "What do you want us to give you so you can feel better?" So he said, Rav Amram the Chasida, he said to himself, he said, Amar Hani called Aminu Mepech Apcha. He said, whatever I say to them, they're going to do the opposite. So he said, you know what? Give me Bisra Sumka Gamri. Bring me the lean meat on coals, V'chamra Marka, and diluted wine. So they brought him the opposite. They brought him exactly what he wanted. Aisue Inu Bisra Shemena Gumri. So they brought him the fatty meat on the coals, V'chamra Chai, and undiluted wine. Shama Yalta Maile Ube Misuta. So Yalta heard what they were doing to Rav Amram, and she was married to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman was the son-in-law of the Reish Kalusa, so Yalta was the daughter of the Reish Kalusa. So she brought him up to the bath, and she put him in the water of the bathhouse until the color of the bathhouse became red like blood, as a result of the sweat that went out of his body, because he ate so much fatty meat and drank so much wine. And his flesh at that time was considered to be pshite. So his flesh was basically filled with blotches. So Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef, when he was suffering in this manner, what he would do, he would turn the mill. Rav Sheshes, Rav Sheshes would carry the beams until he sweated it out. And Amar Gedola Mulacha Shemechamemes Espala. He says, great is work because it warms its people who do it. So, okay, now the next thing is a story, but we're going to leave that story for Sunday's daf. It is a beautiful daf, obviously. And so we do the best we can with trying to understand the secrets of the Agadata. Good Shabbos to everyone. Shkoyach.